Hello, I'm Sydney. I'm a third-year vet student at the University of Missouri, and today I'm going to be going through all of the things that I think are essentials if you're starting vet school. So the first thing that I have on the list is a backpack. Yeah, this is super obvious, but nonetheless, it's still a vet school essential. So the first thing you're going to be needing is just a good old sturdy backpack. The second thing that I have is a laptop. So I have a Samsung laptop and a pen to go with it as well. I personally really prefer laptops to iPads because I don't really love handwriting my notes. For people who do though, a laptop and an iPad is probably essential. But this is touchscreen and it can also flip over to become like a little tablet and you can write on it. So I like the versatility of a laptop that does both because, like I said, I don't really love handwriting my notes. However, I do think a laptop is very essential because most of your exams will be online. My school personally has it to where you can't take any exams on iPads because lockdown isn't supported quite as much on iPads as it is with laptops. So that's kind of just the way my school works, and my personal preference is that I would rather have a laptop than an iPad. But like all my friends have iPads as well because they prefer handwritten notes to like Quizlet. The third thing that I have on the list is a phone. And I know you're probably like, everyone has a phone, duh. My school personally uses iClicker a lot for like checking in and attendance. Sometimes the professors will have us take like little mini quizzes on iClicker, and you can use like your laptop for that, but a lot of them will have you actually close your laptop. That way they know you're not cheating, anything like that. You're not looking at your notes. And so most of them will have you take it on your phone. And therefore phones are basically essential in vet school. I also personally use my phone a lot to like take pictures and videos of things that I see in lab. That way I can go refer to them when I'm home. Or if the instructor's like demonstrating something that we have to know how to do later on for a lab, I will also like record or take pictures of that too. So for me personally, a phone is very much essential. The fourth thing that I have on the list is a calculator. So I have the TI-30X2S, and I use this a lot for like little weight calculations or drug calculations that we'd have to do on the exams. So you can definitely go and invest in a cheaper one if you need, but I already had this from high school because it was required. High school, and then I used it into like college as well. So I already had this, as I'm sure most of you do if you're going into vet school, and it's perfectly fine to just continue using whatever you've got. The next thing that I've got on the list is a stethoscope. So we had to do quite a few like physical exams, heart and lung auscultation labs, things like that. You could definitely borrow a stethoscope from peers if you need to. I quite a few times lent out my stethoscope because I had friends who didn't have one yet. And you technically do not have to have your own stethoscope for my school until you start clinicals. However, me personally, I just wanted to go ahead and have one. Also, the clinic that I work for gifted me one. I personally think it's good to have your own stethoscope because you can go ahead and get like familiar with it, start learning how to use a stethoscope if it's something that you're not comfortable with. So I would go ahead and recommend getting one your first year of vet school. You're gonna need one anyway, so might as well invest in one now. And I personally just have the Littmann 3M. I've heard a lot of people say they want to get the electronic ones that will like Bluetooth to an earpiece or project the heart auscultations to your phone, things like that. My school doesn't allow those. We have to have just like the regular stethoscopes to begin with. So I think that's how most vet schools are, is that you have to learn with the original stethoscopes to begin. And so I'd recommend just investing in the OG stethoscope until you know that you're allowed to have other ones. If you do choose to get a stethoscope, I recommend that you get like a little name tag or charm to go with it. That way, when you do, or if you do choose to lend it out, it's not getting lost or like mixed up, anything like that. And also, I got a case for it because I just keep my stethoscope in my backpack. I didn't want it getting like all crumpled up or anything like that while in my bag and getting damaged. So I have a case to keep it safe. The next thing, and another kind of obvious thing, is writing utensils. So first up, Expo markers. I really like going to school or like meeting up with friends and writing everything out on whiteboards. So Expo markers are a must, and I have a bunch of them. I have like a whole little bag of them. And going along with that is pencils and pens. All of our anatomy and microanatomy / histology exams and practicals were written, so we had to actually write on pieces of paper. So definitely recommend pencils for that. And then sometimes when we do like the physical exam labs, and then when we did like our anesthesiology lab, which granted that was 3rd year, but still we had to use blue or black pens. So both of these are definitely essential. Next thing is a whiteboard. So the school actually supplied us with these so that we could use them while taking tests, and instead of having scratch paper or anything like that, we just write on whiteboards. I'm not sure if all schools are like that, but still, I like to have a whiteboard while studying. I don't really use the little one quite as much, but I will go to the school or go to friends' houses who have whiteboards, and we will just write everything out on those whiteboards. The next thing that I have is a clipboard. So at my school, we have like a big little program. So all of the first years, incoming first years, will be assigned a big, and that big is a 2nd year. They will give you things like advice, vet school essentials. So my big may be a clipboard like this. She also gave me her lab coat and like her dissection kit, things like that. So a clipboard is essential for anatomy. I had this one, this nice one, and I used it when taking exams. I didn't want it getting dirty. Then I had a cheap one that was allowed to get dirty, and I took it into the anatomy lab with me when I was in lab or when I was there at school practicing or studying, and it got disgusting. But that's what its purpose was. And in this one, its purpose was to stay pretty. Another thing that I highly, highly recommend is earplugs. So my school does have them everywhere we take tests, pretty much, for the most part. And I just get distracted by like little noises, little things happening. So I choose to use earplugs like every time I'm taking an exam. There's been a few times though where like those earplugs that the school is providing has run out before I could get them, and then I had to take an exam without my earplugs. So I recommend you just like go buy some super cheap ones. That way you know you have earplugs if you're like me and you know that you need things to like block out all the sounds and distractions. The last technically essential thing that I have on my list that I recommend you get or look into before vet school is online resources. The first one that I have is the Minnesota Veterinary Anatomy Dissection Guide. They have a lot of videos and images of canine and feline cadavers, and they're so helpful if you're someone who likes to like take pictures and label things. So if you just look up Minnesota Veterinary Anatomy, it'll bring you to this homepage. They also have neuroanatomy stuff, which I did not know of until recently. But the first link will be this canine veterinary anatomy, and you hit show links, and then they'll have carnivore dissection labs. You just click on the labs and it will show you like images and videos, and they're all kind of like labeled here with descriptions of what they're doing in that lab. So it was probably my most, that and Quizlet were my most highly used resources, but this one was most used for anatomy, and it was super helpful. Sticking with the anatomy theme, I also used Veterinary Anatomy on YouTube. He does a lot of bone anatomy, which I kind of found to be difficult to find resources for that did such a good job. So I really, really liked his videos over bone anatomy, and he did comparative anatomy a lot too, which is super helpful when you're doing large animal anatomy and they make you learn comparative anatomy. For me personally, I didn't like Ven because I didn't find it super user friendly. Anytime I try to like zoom up or like turn a bone or muscle or something to see the other side of it, it would just like spaz out and flip 360 degrees 10 times. I didn't like the user friendliness of it. I just didn't find it to be super great. So Ven was not my personal favorite, but I have heard a lot of people who do say that they really like it. And the last thing is Quizlet. I am a Quizlet girly. I'm a Quizlet lover. I've also heard a lot of people say that they like Anki. I tried it for like a day, and once again, it was just one of those things where I didn't find it super user friendly, so I did not choose to use it. But I've been using Quizlet since like high school, so it was something that I was just familiar with, and it worked for me. It's always worked for me, so I was like, why would I change it if I know it works, you know? So Quizlet. And I actually invested in Quizlet Pro because that's how much I love Quizlet. I make my own Quizlets a lot of the times. I wanted to be able to upload my own images, so Quizlet Pro it was. So that is 10 things that I consider to be essentials to get before you even start vet school. Now moving on to things that I think you definitely need for vet school, but you might want to hold off until after you know your school's requirements. First up is an anatomy lab coat. There might be schools who have different requirements and want you to have like your name embroidered on it or the school embroidered on it. Mine personally did not care if you had that. So I just got this cheap one off of Amazon and it's worked perfectly fine for me. But you might want to wait and see if your school has any different requirements for a lab coat before you invest in one. The next thing that I have on the list is scrubs. So I know a lot of people get excited. They want to start buying scrubs as soon as they get into vet school. I really suggest you wait until you know your school's requirements. A lot of them will have requirements for certain styles or certain colors that can or cannot be worn at your school. So I say hold off for all intensive purposes and wait until you know what scrubs you're allowed to have. And then at that point you can start investing in scrubs. But if you don't have scrubs or you're like wanting to buy new scrubs before you start vet school, I say wait just a little bit until you know which ones you're allowed to have. And my school also didn't even require us to wear scrubs first year. Some schools do, some schools don't. Mine did not. I personally didn't choose to wear scrubs to school. It just wasn't my style. I do know people who do choose to wear scrubs, but I do really highly recommend you wait until you know what scrubs are allowed by your school. Next thing that I have on the list is coveralls. I'm pretty sure most all schools will require that you have coveralls. However, my school had requirements that they have to be navy blue and short sleeve. They also gave us scholarships to buy things that are essential for school. So I bought these and the scholarship fully covered it. So they were essentially free. They are the Dickies brand. We didn't have to have a certain brand, but this is just what the school had on hand. And like I said, the scholarship covered them. So your school might have requirements like mine did, and I suggest waiting to buy these until you know what those requirements are, even though you most likely will have to have some type of coverall. Next thing that I have is bibs. So my school doesn't require that you have these, but I already had these because of work. So the brand that I've got is UtterTech. For me personally, I know I want to do mixed animal medicine. I already work at a vet clinic where we do mixed animal medicine. So bibs were an essential before I even started vet school. However, if you don't want to do mixed animal or large animal medicine, you might want to wait and potentially not ever even get bibs. I just don't foresee them really being all that helpful if you know that you're not interested in mixed or large animal medicine. For the most part, you could get by with coveralls instead of having to buy coveralls and bibs. But if you do know that you want to do mixed animal or large animal medicine, bibs are totally recommended. Next thing on the list is waterproof boots. When we entered first year of vet school, we knew we had to have waterproof boots so that we could do large animal exams and large animal labs. However, they told us that if we already had boots like muck boots or any other type of more expensive boot that you would use for large animal, that we were allowed to use them, but if you didn't want to invest in a pair of boots that are like $150 or more, that you could just buy rain boots. So I know people who aren't interested in doing mixed or large animal medicine, and they went ahead and just bought waterproof boots or like rain boots. But if you already have them, or you know for a fact that you're interested in mixed or large animal medicine, you might want to go ahead and invest in a nicer pair of boots like muck boots. If you don't want to, you might just want to hold off until your school tells you what types of boots you are or are not allowed to have. The next thing that I have on my list is a dissection book and dissection kit. So once again, my big provided me with both of these, the dissection book and the dissection kit. Your school may or may not do the same thing. So I suggest waiting until you get your anatomy instructions to buy a dissection book or dissection kit. So that is all of the things that I consider to be essentials for vet school. I hope this gave you an idea of some things you might want to go ahead and buy or hold off buying until vet school starts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and goodbye.